As today the court is ruling on the decision to prorogue Parliament and of course the appeal from Gina Miller with regards to the English court ruling in favour of the UK government, I think it wise to go back and cover day 3. I've covered day 1 and I've covered day 2. Day 3 though, day 3 was interesting. On day 3 there were some short submissions in court, in addition to that involving Panic and Keane, the lawyers fighting for the Remainers and the government. The list of interveners comprised of the Lord Advocate for Scotland, former Prime Minister John Major or Sir John Major, Labour's Shadow Attorney General Shami Chakrabarti, the Welsh Government, a Northern Irish rights campaigner, and the Public Law Project, each being represented by their own lawyer, each putting their own spin on why prorogation is unlawful. During one of the final statements of Lord Panic, the justices, lords and ladies sat opposite, had asked what would happen if they then declared that the advice given by Boris to the Queen was unlawful. Now we should definitely discuss this, because Boris is the only one who can recall Parliament. So can you give Boris Johnson a mandate to force him to do such a thing? What if he disagrees? What if he decides not to? Could the Speaker of the Commons and Lords allow to summon MPs and peers back to Parliament despite what Boris Johnson does? There are powers and mechanisms in place that could in fact allow that. However, Boris is the only one that can actually do it, and he could just prorogue Parliament straight away, which would be incredibly funny. Obviously bad timing, but come on. Over the course of the day, with that kind of question lingering, the one big takeaway from it was no one had an answer. Nobody knew what would happen, because again, politics and law, there is a separation on purpose. This case should not be before the justices. It really shouldn't. But it is, so we are stuck. Some saying, what about the Constitution? Is it not in the Constitution? No, it's not. Lord Panic, on behalf of the challengers led by Gina Miller, in order to alleviate fears of the justices, had attempted to placate the justices who had also on day 3 mentioned the separation of powers, as most judges are normally unwilling to veer into any political decision. This is why justiciability was the key theme throughout this entire 3-day ordeal. We had seen this best when one of the interveners strayed too far into simply complaining about Brexit rather than concentrating on the legal issues, and ended up getting told off by the justices as a result, who told him submissions were completely irrelevant to the legal questions. When he persevered, he was told exactly the same time again, don't abuse our politeness. Lord Panic, being aware of this, tried to eliminate and illuminate a way forward for the justices, which involved the least amount of interference with the political realm, assuring them that he didn't want them to design new complex rules on prorogation or force commitments on the Prime Minister, or indeed find that there was malign intent by the Prime Minister. This isn't the constitutional equivalent of an Iron Man suit, with him arguing that a simple legal declaration of unlawfulness would be enough for the Speakers of the Commons and Lords to know what to do next politically and keep the justices out of politics. Lady Hale, at the close of all of this, summed up the 3 days by saying, none of this is easy, and that the court will endeavour to provide its full judgment as soon as humanly possible. Well, that's today. Today we find out whether or not the Supreme Court has ruled in favour of Boris Johnson on 2 instances, whether they rule in favour of the Scottish Court and Gina Miller, or a bit of both. A win for Boris Johnson would be for both to lose. Any other version of that, and Boris loses. What happens next, though, is tricky, because if they decide to bring back Parliament or say that the prorogation was unlawful, it does force Boris Johnson into a position where he has to then decide whether to adhere to the courts, who should never have been involved in this in the first place, or not. And as far as Gina Miller's appeal goes, it's a Ramona doing Ramona things. Her losing is actually a blessing in disguise, and I'm looking forward to seeing the smile wiped off her face again. Hopefully this will be all resolved tomorrow, and we can have a really decent discussion about what has happened and what will happen going forward. Because if the Supreme Court decides that the prorogation was lawful, there will be no PMQs until the middle of October, meaning there will be 2 weeks till D-Day. And I'm actually looking forward to that. Although if they're brought back early, PMQ streams everyone, yay! More Boris v Jeremy. We need that. That'll be fun.